is this concept of inventory versus curation. This is a big effort differentiator in understanding. So you want to think about whether or not you want to inventory your data assets. And when we mean by data assets, we're talking about like reports or an integration or a data system or whatever, or curate or both. So to inventory something, we're seeing sort of documenting the existence and details of a data asset with information available from the source tool system without need for detailed human steward review or input. So what can you get out of that data system? And typically you're going to want to do this if it's a goal of yours to be able to discover and find anything that's out there without necessarily knowing is this a good thing or a bad thing or what's it mean, right? So for report ETL, this is typically going to include sort of this limited information: the name, the location of it, the tool it came from, maybe the data system it's from, who wrote it, maybe like a creation date, and if you're lucky, what the domain is, like, oh, this is HR, finance, or something. That might be something. The technical details, you might be able to get the code for it, or a query related to it, or maybe a link to where that code is. If you're trying to understand what data is in the report or in that ETL, you might be able to get the report labels, or if you're really lucky, the actual just data model objects, like, oh, this is the list of fields that are in this, the outcome of this query here. Lineage can be difficult. Typically, at the best you might get is a source and target field mapping, right? Something that is mapped from a query or whatever. This is sort of a high level of things. I mean, you might get a very minimum information, but inventorying can be important if you think about getting what's the goal here is to get from an automation the most accurate and realistic information you can pull from the data systems without forever effort to build the inventory, and that can be automated. Okay. So there's a high chance of automation for this type of content. For an important effort, it's to greatly reduce your effort. So whatever you can do with an inventory, you're going to want to do. Now, think about this. If you're going to inventory stuff, it helps with discovery, but you have to be careful that it can create false sense of confidence with inaccurate or misunderstood processes. So just because you've got something in inventory doesn't mean it's right or it's good or someone should use it, right? So that's a sort of another level. So where the effort comes in here is now curating. So you've brought this information in, you've inventoried it, or maybe you haven't brought it in and you're just going to curate it as you document it. This is creating documentation, clarification, classification, explanation, and evaluation of a data asset with information available through review of the source tool system, the creator and/or steward review, and analysis of intent and usage. So this is where we're trying to say, what's the purpose of this report? How usable is it? Is it a certified report? Is it a bad report? Is it a trusted report? Whatever. Who owns it? Who developed it? What's the context of this? Was it created for some specific, reason? What data is on it? You're not just getting the list of the labels, but you're maybe putting glossary definitions on there and understanding like selection criteria, sort criteria, and all more detailed information there. How to use it? How does someone execute and run this? Policy attributes, where you're saying, does this contain any like PII or HIPAA or other kinds of information? And maybe you're trying to really understand the detailed lineage of this, where that could have curated processes. So that takes a lot of effort to do. I mean, this is where a lot of effort can happen particularly on reports and ETL processes. So two takeaways for this is that if you decide, rather than saying you need to curate every possible report, if you say, I'm going to curate our 25 most critical reports in our organization, and then I'm going to wait until someone has a question on a report, and then I'll curate that. Also, any new report we build, we will curate as we go. And the value of that is that the process of building a report, almost every single thing I just talked about that you capture, is something that the developer and the requester are going to determine anyway. It's just a matter of documenting it. So curation is where you get the most value, but there's limited chance for automation. It requires human engagement, but it creates a high confidence in use and generates great data knowledge value. So it has an enormous return when you have good curated information in your reports, but it is the highest amount of effort. So what you need to decide is, I don't need to curate everything, but how do I prioritize what I curate? Right? And that's where a kind of help desk or market-driven approach can help. But also, and this is really important, is to create that marginal additional effort for your report writers and creators and requesters to document that curated information as they build new things. Okay? Critical.